minds do an incredibly interesting thing. They just do this wonderful thing where if we hear a word, specifically I'm talking about a noun, a person, a place, or thing. If we hear a noun, we come across the word, we read it, we just happen to come across this word in our everyday lives, our brains will begin to conjure up an image that we associate with that word, something that we assume that that word is, whether we've ever been around that particular thing or not. We just kind of have these images that our brains make up for us. It's kind of fun. Like if I say the word peppermint, I'm going to guess that for most of you, you're thinking about now a red and white candy of some kind. Maybe you're thinking about a candy cane, given the occasion that is this evening. If I say the word sugar plum, which is one word, by the way, I found that out the hard way. But if I say the word sugar plum, you might think about some sort of a sugar-coated dried fruit, maybe a, I don't know, what are those things called? Gumdrops? There's the word. I'm on it tonight, guys. I'm not used to preaching tonight. But that's what you're going to think about if I say the word sugar plum, right? If I say the word nutcracker, maybe you think about an ornate thing made to look like an old soldier with a messed up, weird mouth. You might think about those sorts of things. But here's the thing, these kind of showcase the problem that comes with our mind's automatic ability to conjure up these images. And that's that most of the time the thing that we assume that those words mean, well, they're wrong. In the case of peppermint, like I said, we maybe think of candy or candy canes. We don't think about a plant with a unique set of leaves. That's what a peppermint actually is. When we hear the word sugar plum, we think about that sugar-coated dried fruit, but that's not what a sugar plum is. And I don't know about you, I've never actually had an experience with sugar plum. I'm going to guess because we live on this side of the ocean, most of you probably haven't either. But apparently, a sugar plum is just a hard little ball of sugar. That's it. I feel lied to. There's no fruit flavoring, nothing. Just hard sugar. That's it. What a disappointment. And sure, when we hear the word nutcracker, you think of those ornate soldier things. That is technically a nutcracker, but have you ever actually tried to crack a nut with one of those things? Most of the time you break it. They're not actually designed to crack nuts. If you want to crack a nut, you need a metal vise-looking thing with maybe some serrated edges near the hinge, and that's what's actually going to crack your nut. But most of the time we tend to use these images when we hear these words. We associate with them, we make the assumption that that's what those words mean. And yet, far too often, we assume incorrectly. But we don't think much about those things. We don't really look beyond the surface of those. We just assume that we're right. Do we not? I don't know about you, but I'm guilty of all the time making the assumption I'm right. And my wife is usually more than happy to point out, no, I am not. But we just have this thing about us that we make these assumptions, whether we've experienced these things or not, whether we've actually come across them in our everyday lives. This is what we think about. For instance, if I were to say the word king, there's bound to be some certain images that come across your mind. For myself, I tend to think about somebody who's very regal, someone who's tall and handsome and muscular with a chiseled jawline and a perfect, well-kept beard. Am I just thinking about myself? Hi, Mom. We tend to picture somebody who wears clothes that are very ornate in nature, very bright. They look comfortable, but also uncomfortable at the same time. We picture them with these long flowing capes. Usually they're red, maybe with white fur around the trim. We always picture them with a gold scepter. Maybe it's got a giant ruby on the end of it, or at least that's what I like to picture as a giant ruby. They sit upon these gilded thrones. Everyone has to pay attention to them. They wear these beautiful golden crowns with all kinds of expensive jewels lining it. To be honest with you, I don't know where I come up with those images as for what a king is, because I'm going to guess that like most of us in this room, I've never actually lived in a monarchy. I've never lived in an area that has a system of government that's dependent upon one particular family. Can you just imagine that for a second? To think about the fact that you only have one family to blame for everything that's wrong in your life for your entire life instead of having to learn new names every 4 to 8 years? Oh, that's bliss. But this is what we think about when we think about a king. This is somebody that we picture of that. We imagine that these folks never have to struggle for anything, that when they're born, they are literally born into the lap of luxury. When they are first entered into the world, their birth is proclaimed to the entire nation, sometimes even to leaders of other nations. All the subjects of this entire country want to come and see this new king, to just catch a glimpse of this special baby that one day will reign over all of them. They're placed into these very soft cribs, usually made of the softest material available to them. They're wrapped in the most comfortable blankets you and I could ever possibly imagine. They're kept in warm castles, constantly surrounded by all sorts of servants and attendants that will see to their every need no matter what hour it is. This is how we expect a king to be born. This is how we picture. This is the assumption that we make. And that's what makes the events of Christmas so unusual. I'm going to guess that for most of us in here, we're so familiar with the story of Christmas, all the little things about it, that we've never really stopped to think about just how absurd it really is. We've grown so comfortable with it throughout our lives. We sing songs. We just sang songs about it. We read stories about it. We watch movies about it. Heck, we even have little recreations we have in our own home for it. We've grown so accustomed to the story of Christmas that we never stop to think, why? Why was it that way? Out of every way that Jesus could have entered the world, why this one? Because this is more than just the birth of a king. This is the birth of the King of Kings, the Son of God Himself. And yet, His birth is so far removed from what we would expect. His very conception was so controversial, it nearly caused the end of a marriage before vows had ever been exchanged. His birth was considered so unbelievably offensive to people that the Virgin Mary likely became ostracized from her community. She lost friendships, she lost friends, she lost family members who wouldn't talk to her anymore. Her father probably lost business. When he was born, he wasn't born in a well-worn, kept castle. He was born in a cold barn reserved for livestock. He wasn't wrapped in all kinds of blankets and warmth and comfort. He was wrapped in the cloths that they had around them, whatever they could find. His birth wasn't proclaimed to the entire nation. It wasn't something that everybody in the world got to find out about it. His birth instead was proclaimed to a bunch of common, ordinary, stinky shepherds. He wasn't placed in a soft, comfortable crib. Instead, he was laid in a tool for feeding animals. Yet this is the Son of God. And so as rationally minded people, we have to ask the question, why? Because if this is the Son of God, if this is truly the King of Kings, then we have to make the assumption that He could have chosen any way to be born. He could have chosen any time period. He could have chosen any family. He could have chosen any place. And yet He chose a blue-collar family from a town where it's considered so reviled that there's even a statement that goes around saying nothing good could ever come from Nazareth. He's born in such a uniquely humble way that we have to ask the question, why would God choose this? Why would He pick this for His Son? the more I've thought about this, the more that I believe that this reason was actually set well before the night of Christmas. In Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, we're told, "Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. See, the virgin will conceive, have a son, and name him Emmanuel." Now that name, Emmanuel, it holds incredible meaning to it. It actually is a Hebrew word meaning God with us. As John would later put it in his book, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This wasn't a God who was going to make himself separate from the rest of us. This wasn't a Lord who was going to detach himself and reign over us and expect us to fall at his feet in every way, shape, or form. Instead, this was a Lord born with us. Jesus came, lived amongst those who were the lowest of the low. He didn't choose to be separate from the very people who needed his gospel most of all. Instead, he was born and raised and lived amongst the poorest of the poor. He sought out the outcast, the downtrodden, the people that everybody else wrote off because they were too far gone. This is who Jesus, the King of Kings, Emmanuel, God with us, chose to spend his time. He was born to the poorest of the poor. He was so superior to us in every single way, and yet he chose to make his living amongst the most common of people. He had every reason in the world to be separate from us. Instead chose, in every sense of the word, to be with us. Not just live amongst our midst, but to truly, completely, and wholly be with us. We know that there's a difference between when somebody is around us and when someone is truly with us. And Jesus, the Son of God, the Emmanuel, the King of Kings, chose to be with us. He knows our struggles. He knows our hardships. He knows our pain. He knows our misery because he went through it too. This is not what we would expect from God, right? This is not what we expect from God. But at every point in Jesus' life, starting with his birth, he subverted all of our expectations of him. They expected someone with wealth and power. He became poor, born of a family with little to no influence whatsoever. They expected someone with military strength and prowess. He showed compassion and humility. They expected a rebellious leader. He became a humble servant of all. They expected someone distant and separated. He showed them a God with us. We had it in our heads that we knew what the Messiah would be, what the King of Kings would say and do. And he showed us our expectations of him could not have possibly been more wrong. We don't follow a king that is separate from us. We don't follow a king who flexes his superiority over us. We don't follow a king born into wealth and power. We follow a king better than all kings. We follow Emmanuel, God truly with us. Paul put it in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 through 8. He wrote exactly who our king is when he said, "Who existing in the form of God did not consider equality with God as something to be exploited. Instead, he emptied himself by assuming the form of a servant, taking on the lines of humanity. And when he had come as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Tonight, we light the final candle of Advent, the Christ candle, the candle that represents our Emmanuel, our King of Kings, our God with us. Only through Jesus Christ can our faith be justified. Can our hope be secure? Can our joy be complete? And can our peace be restored? Tonight, let us celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior with glad and joyful hearts. Father.